My son called me a worthless investment while I was dying. March 22nd, 2011. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months to live. My 21-year-old son Michael looks me in the eye and delivers the crushing blow. Dad, you're going to die anyway. Why waste my money keeping you alive? You're not worth the investment. He walked out, never came back, until 3 hours ago. I made him a promise that day. If I somehow beat this death sentence, I'd build an empire. An empire he'd never touch. An empire that would prove his biggest mistake wasn't abandoning me, it was underestimating me. Guess what? I didn't just survive. I built a $50 million medical device company. I bought an $8 million mansion. And when my broke, desperate son showed up today, begging for help, I had security cameras rolling. What happened next will blow your mind. Let me take you back to that hospital room. Room 314 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of machines beeping. Dr. Martinez had just finished explaining my death sentence in clinical terms. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Mr. Wilson. The tumor has metastasized to your liver and lungs. Based on current medical research, you have approximately 6 months, maybe less. 6 months to live. At 48 years old, I'm processing this information, trying to wrap my head around the fact that I'm going to die. When Michael walks in, my only son, the kid I raised alone after his mother died in a car accident when he was 12. The kid I worked double shifts for. The kid I put through college. He sits down in that plastic hospital chair and asks the question I thought would bring us closer together. Dad, what's this going to cost? Not how are you feeling? Not what are the treatment options? Not we'll get through this together. What's this going to cost? I showed him the preliminary estimates Dr. Martinez had given me. $847,000. That was the projected cost for aggressive treatment. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgery if I was lucky enough to qualify, experimental treatments if the conventional ones failed. Michael stared at those numbers for a long time. I watched him calculate. I could literally see him running the math in his head. Dad, he said finally, let's be realistic here. The doctor said 6 months. These treatments might buy you, what, a few more weeks? Maybe a month or two if you're incredibly lucky? I nodded. That was accurate. So we're talking about spending almost $1 million to maybe extend your life by a few weeks. That doesn't make financial sense. Financial sense. He was talking about my life in terms of return on investment. Michael, this isn't about money, I said. This is about fighting. This is about not giving up. He leaned forward in that chair, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. Cold, calculating. Like he was explaining a bad business deal to a client. Dad, you're going to die anyway. The statistics don't lie. 3% survival rate for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3%. That means 97% of people in your situation die within 2 years. Most die within 6 months. He pulled out his phone and started showing me articles, medical studies, survival statistics. He had done his research. Even if we spend every penny of your savings, even if we mortgage the house, even if we drain your retirement account, you're still going to die. The only difference is you'll die broke, and I'll be left with nothing. I felt something break inside me at that moment. Not my heart, something deeper, something fundamental about what I thought family meant. So what are you saying, Michael? He stood up, straightened his jacket, and delivered the words that would haunt me for 13 years. I'm saying you're not worth the investment, Dad. I'm 21 years old. I have my whole life ahead of me. I'm not going to throw away my future on a lost cause. A lost cause. That's what he called his dying father. I've already talked to a financial advisor, he continued. If we liquidate everything now, there's enough money to cover your basic care in a hospice facility. You can die with dignity, and I can use the remaining funds to finish my MBA program. He had it all figured out. My death was just another line item in his financial planning. Michael, please, I need you. I can't do this alone. He shook his head. Dad, I can't watch you deteriorate. I can't waste the next 6 months of my life sitting in hospitals and watching you die. You're not family I'm willing to sacrifice my future for. And then he said the words that changed everything. You're going to die anyway. Why waste my money keeping you alive? You're not worth the investment. He walked out of that hospital room, and I never saw him again. No phone calls during chemotherapy. No visits during the worst days when I was throwing up everything I tried to eat. No support when I lost 40 pounds and looked like a skeleton. No encouragement when the first round of treatments failed. Nothing. I went through 8 months of hell completely alone. $847,000 in medical bills. Bills I paid by selling everything I owned. My house, my car, my retirement account. Everything. You know what kept me alive during those darkest months? It wasn't hope. It wasn't faith. It was pure spite. Every time I wanted to give up, every time the pain became unbearable, every time the doctor's stars suggested I consider palliative care, I thought about Michael's words. You're not worth the investment. I made myself a promise in that hospital bed. If I somehow beat the 3% odds, if I somehow survive this death sentence, I would build something extraordinary, something that would prove Michael made the biggest mistake of his life. Not just abandoning me, but underestimating me. Here's what Michael didn't know about his old man. I wasn't just some blue-collar worker waiting to die. I was an engineer, a problem solver. And when you tell an engineer he's not worth investing in, you better be prepared for the consequences. Because engineers don't just survive. They innovate. And you won't believe what I built from that hospital bed. September 3rd, 2012. The day I got the phone call that changed everything. Mr. Wilson, this is Dr. Martinez. I need you to come in immediately. We need to discuss your latest test results. I thought he was calling to tell me I was dying faster than expected. I had been in treatment for 8 months. The conventional chemotherapy had failed. The radiation had failed. I was down to 97 pounds from my original 160. I looked like death walking. But when I got to his office, Dr. Martinez had a look on his face I'd never seen before. Edward, I don't know how to explain this, but your tumors are gone. Gone. Not smaller. Not reduced. Gone. The experimental immunotherapy treatment I had volunteered for at Johns Hopkins had worked. Against all odds, against all statistical probability, my immune system had somehow learned to attack the cancer cells. The tumors in my pancreas, liver, and lungs had completely disappeared. I was part of the 3%. The miracle cases. The statistical anomalies that doctors write research papers about. But here's the thing about surviving a death sentence. It changes you. Not just physically, mentally, spiritually. When you've stared death in the face and won, you realize you're capable of things you never imagined. While I was in remission, recovering my strength, I started thinking about those 8 months of treatment. 8 months of fighting for my life while machines pumped poison into my veins. 8 months of being so sick I couldn't keep water down. 8 months of complete isolation, because my only family had written me off as a bad investment. And during those long nights in the hospital, I had an idea. The medical devices that saved my life were primitive. The monitoring systems that tracked my vitals were outdated. The infusion pumps that delivered my chemotherapy were inefficient. As an engineer, I could see a dozen ways to improve them. So I started designing. I used my laptop in that hospital bed to draft patent applications. Precision monitoring devices that could detect cancer cell activity at levels existing technology couldn't measure. Infusion systems that could deliver targeted therapy with surgical precision. Diagnostic equipment that could identify pancreatic cancer in stage 1 instead of stage 4. The devices that could have caught my cancer early. The devices that could save other fathers from going through what I went through. I filed 17 patent applications from my hospital bed. 17 innovations born from spite and determination. By December 2012, I was healthy enough to leave the hospital permanently. The doctors called it a complete remission. I called it my second chance at life. Michael never called to congratulate me, never called to apologize, never called at all. So I took the $50,000 I had left after medical bills, the last money to my name, and I founded Wilson Medical Innovations. My first product was the Wilson Precision Monitor, a device that could detect pancreatic cancer biomarkers 18 months earlier than existing technology. The device that could have saved my life without requiring a miracle. I built the first prototype in my garage, tested it at a local medical research facility, applied for FDA approval. The device worked exactly as designed. Within 6 months, I had my first customer. City of Hope Cancer Center in Los Angeles ordered 50 units at $12,000 each. $600,000 in revenue from a $50,000 investment. But I was just getting started. My second product was the Wilson Targeted Infusion System. Instead of flooding the entire body with chemotherapy and hoping it reached the tumor, my system could deliver treatment directly to cancer cells with 94% accuracy. The demand was immediate. Hospitals across the country wanted this technology, the system that could deliver the same therapeutic results with 70% less side effects, the system that could help other cancer patients avoid the nightmare I had endured. By 2015, Wilson Medical Innovations had generated its first $1 million in revenue. I hired 12 employees, opened a real office, filed 43 additional patents. Michael never called to congratulate me on that milestone either. 2017 brought our breakthrough year. The FDA approved my third innovation, the Wilson Early Detection Array, a blood test that could identify 15 different types of cancer in stage 1 with 96% accuracy. The licensing deals started pouring in. Quest Diagnostics, LabCorp, Mayo Clinic, Kaiser Permanente. Everyone wanted this technology. Revenue jumped to $15 million that year. 2019, we went international. European medical approval, Japanese distribution agreements, Canadian licensing deals, $28 million in revenue. 2021, despite the pandemic, we launched the Wilson Comprehensive Cancer Platform, an integrated system combining early detection, precision monitoring, and targeted treatment in one revolutionary package. The military ordered it for all VA hospitals. Medicare approved it for nationwide coverage. Insurance companies started requiring it as the standard of care. $41 million in revenue. By 2023, Wilson Medical Innovations was valued at $50 million. I owned an $8 million mansion in Malibu Hills, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I drove a Tesla Model S Plaid. I employed 147 people across 3 facilities, all built on the foundation of being called a worthless investment. Every success was powered by the memory of Michael walking out of that hospital room. Every breakthrough was motivated by proving him wrong. Every dollar I earned was a testament to the biggest mistake he ever made, not abandoning me, but underestimating me. And last month, something happened that would bring my son back into my life, whether he wanted to be there or not. Forbes magazine called, "You want to know what it's like to build an empire when your own son thinks you're worthless?" Let me tell you about the last 13 years. Every milestone I reached alone. Every victory I celebrated alone. Every setback I overcame alone. 2015, when Wilson Medical hit its first $1 million in revenue, I called my assistant Sarah and told her to book a table for one at Nobu Malibu. I raised a glass of champagne to an empty chair and said, "This one's for you, Michael." Thanks for the motivation. 2017, FDA approval for the early detection array, the technology that would save thousands of lives. The breakthrough that medical journals called revolutionary. I got the phone call at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. Know who I shared it with? My golden retriever, Murphy. He seemed more excited than my son ever would have been. 2019, international expansion. Our first European contract worth 12 million euros. I bought a bottle of Dom Perignon 2008, sat on my deck overlooking the Pacific, and realized something profound. I didn't need Michael's approval anymore. I had built something bigger than his small mind could have ever comprehended. But you know what really drove me? The complete radio silence. Not once in 13 years did Michael reach out. Not when local newspapers wrote about Wilson Medical. Not when I was featured in Medical Device Today magazine. Not when the Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story about my cancer survival and business success titled From Deathbed to Boardroom. Nothing. I started wondering if he even knew I was alive. Maybe he assumed I had died as predicted. Maybe he was surprised I lasted longer than 6 months. Maybe he figured I'd spent every penny on treatment and died broke like he'd calculated. So I decided to test that theory. 2020, I hired a private investigator, Marcus Thompson from Elite Investigations, $5,000 to find out what my son had been doing for the past decade. The report was fascinating. Michael Wilson, now 32 years old, had finished his MBA program with my death money exactly as planned. Started a consulting firm called Strategic Solutions, LC. Married Jennifer Patterson, daughter of a real estate developer, in 2016. Bought a 4-bedroom house in Sherman Oaks with a $600,000 mortgage. But here's where it got interesting. His business was failing. Strategic Solutions had lost 3 major clients in 2019. His revenue had dropped from $200,000 to $37,000. His wife had filed for divorce in January 2021. The house was in foreclosure proceedings. Michael was broke, desperate, and according to the private investigator's surveillance photos, drinking heavily at a bar called Murphy's Tavern every Thursday night. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I was building a $50 million empire, he was drowning his failures in cheap whiskey. But I still didn't contact him, because I had learned something important about family during those 13 years of solitude. Real family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up when you need them most. My real family became the people at Wilson Medical. Sarah Chen, my assistant for 8 years, who worked weekends without being asked. Dr. Robert Hayes, my research director, who celebrated every FDA approval like it was his own child's graduation. Maria Santos, my head of manufacturing, who sent me homemade tamales every Christmas. These people didn't share my DNA, but they shared my vision. They didn't abandon me during crisis. They helped me build something extraordinary. By 2023, Wilson Medical employed 147 people across 3 facilities in California, Texas, and North Carolina. We had saved an estimated 43,000 lives through early cancer detection. We had improved treatment outcomes for over 200,000 patients. I had created a legacy that would outlive me by decades. And Michael? Michael was still calculating the cost of everything and the value of nothing. But last month, everything changed. Forbes magazine wanted to do a feature story on Wilson Medical for their American Success Stories issue. They sent a writer named Jennifer Walsh to interview me for 3 days. Professional photographer, video crew, the full treatment. The article was scheduled to run March 8th, 2024. The headline they chose was perfect. The Survivor Who Built an Empire. How one man's cancer diagnosis led to a medical revolution. 5 pages. Glossy photos. A detailed breakdown of Wilson Medical's $50 million valuation. My personal net worth. The Malibu Mansion. The success story that started in a hospital bed with a 3% survival rate. I knew the article would get attention. I knew it might go viral. Medical device success stories always generated interest in business circles. What I didn't expect was how quickly Michael would see it. 3 days after publication, my phone rang. March 11th, 2024, 10:47 a.m. The phone call that would set everything in motion. Hello? Dad? It's Michael. 13 years of silence, and those were the first words he chose. Not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong," not "Thank God you're alive." Just "Dad?" It's Michael, like we had talked yesterday. Like 13 years of abandonment was just a brief interruption in our regular conversation schedule. Michael, I kept my voice neutral, controlled. This is unexpected. Yeah, I saw the Forbes article. Dad, I had no idea you were... I didn't know you had survived the cancer. And your company, Wilson Medical, it's incredible what you've built. Interesting. He knew the exact name of my company. He had definitely read every word of that article, probably multiple times. How did you find my number? I asked. I hired someone to help me locate you, a private investigator. He hired a private investigator, just like I had hired one to investigate him. The difference, I did it out of curiosity. He did it out of desperation. Dad, I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I was hoping we could meet. There's so much I want to say to you. So much I need to explain. Explain what, Michael? A long pause. I could hear him breathing, calculating, choosing his words carefully. About what happened 13 years ago. About why I left. I was young, Dad. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle watching you go through that. I made mistakes. Mistakes. He called abandoning his dying father mistakes. Where are you living now, Michael? Another pause. I'm between places right now. Going through a divorce. It's been complicated. Between places. That was a polite way of saying homeless. I'm sorry to hear that. Divorce can be difficult. Yeah, it's been rough. The business I started, it didn't work out the way I planned. The economy, you know? But Dad, seeing what you've accomplished, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were brilliant. Always knew I was brilliant. The same son who called me a worthless investment now claimed he always believed in me. Michael, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish with this phone call? I want to see you, Dad. I want us to be family again. I know I hurt you, and I want to make it right. Maybe I could even help with the company. I have an MBA and business experience. I could contribute something valuable. There it was, the real reason for the call. The Forbes article hadn't just told him I was alive. It had told him I was worth $50 million. That's an interesting proposition, I said. Tell me, Michael, what happened to the money? The money you saved by not investing in my medical treatment? Silence. I used it for my education and business startup, like I planned. And how did that work out for you? More silence. Not as well as I hoped. I see. So now you'd like to discuss becoming part of Wilson Medical. The company built on technology I developed while you calculated whether I was worth keeping alive. Dad, please. That's not fair. I was 21 years old. I didn't understand. You understood perfectly, Michael. You understood that I was a bad investment. You were right about one thing, though. I was dying. The Edward Wilson you abandoned 13 years ago did die in that hospital. The question is, are you prepared to meet the man who survived? Yes, he said immediately. Yes, I want to meet him. Good. I'll text you my address. Come by tomorrow at 2 p.m. I hung up and smiled for the first time in 13 years. The trap was set. After I hung up with Michael, I sat in my study for exactly 17 minutes, planning the most elaborate test a father has ever given his son. I needed to know Michael's true intentions. Was he genuinely seeking reconciliation, or was this purely about money? The Forbes article had revealed my wealth, but it hadn't revealed everything about my health status. So I decided to create a little misinformation campaign. I called Dr. Martinez at Cedars-Sinai. After 13 years, we had become friends. He had watched my miraculous recovery and celebrated every milestone of Wilson Medical's success. Robert, I need a favor, a very specific favor that might sound unusual. What do you need, Edward? I need you to accidentally leak some information about my medical condition. False information. I explained my plan. Within 24 hours, Dr. Martinez had a carefully orchestrated conversation with Dr. Susan Chang at UCLA Medical Center. Dr. Chang mentioned it to her colleague, Dr. Peterson at Cedars. Dr. Peterson discussed it with his golf partner, who happened to be a medical reporter for the Los Angeles Business Journal. The whisper campaign was simple but effective. Edward Wilson's pancreatic cancer had returned. Recent test results showed aggressive metastasis. Prognosis uncertain but concerning. By March 13th, the rumor was circulating through Los Angeles medical circles. I even had my assistant Sarah plant the story on 2 medical industry forums where she knew Michael would never look, but his private investigator might. Then I waited. Michael called again on March 14th, this time at 8:36 p.m. Dad, I heard some concerning news. Are you okay? Someone told me there might be medical issues. Someone told him, which meant his private investigator was still monitoring me, still gathering intelligence about my condition and financial status. What did you hear, Michael? Just rumors. Something about your cancer possibly returning. I wanted to check on you. That's thoughtful of you to be concerned about my health. Of course I'm concerned. You're my father. Interesting. 13 years ago, I wasn't family worth investing in. Now, suddenly, I was his father worth being concerned about. The rumors are partially accurate, I said. I've been having some symptoms. Fatigue, weight loss. I'm scheduled for comprehensive testing next week. Oh God, Dad. I'm so sorry. This must be terrifying for you. It's concerning, yes. But I've been through this before. I know what to expect. Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do to help? Actually, Michael, your timing for wanting to reconnect is interesting. If the test results confirm what the doctors suspect, I might need to make some difficult decisions about the company, about my estate planning. A pause. I could practically hear him processing this information. Dad, please don't think about that right now. Focus on getting better. Focus on fighting this. I appreciate that, Michael. But at my age, with my history, I have to be realistic. The doctors say if the cancer has returned with this level of aggression, we're looking at months, not years. Months? Maybe 6 to 8 months, similar timeline to the original diagnosis. Another long pause. Dad, about tomorrow's meeting, maybe we should postpone until after your test results. I don't want to stress you during this time. No, Michael. I think we should meet tomorrow as planned. If my time is limited, I'd like to resolve things between us sooner rather than later. Okay. Yes. 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be there. After I hung up, I called Marcus Thompson, my private investigator. Marcus, I need 24-hour surveillance on Michael Wilson starting right now. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, every phone call he makes. What am I looking for? Evidence of his true character. By the next morning, I had my answer. Michael had spent 4 hours at a law office downtown. Goldberg, Stone, and Associates, estate planning specialists. The test was complete. Michael had failed spectacularly. Now it was time for the final exam. March 15th, 2024. 1 p.m., 1 hour before Michael's arrival. I had spent the morning setting up the most important business presentation of my life. My study looked perfect. Professional camera positioned at the optimal angle. Ring light adjusted for clear visibility. Wireless microphone clipped to my shirt. 2 laptops running, one for streaming, one for monitoring comments and viewer count. I went live on YouTube at exactly 1:15 p.m. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Edward Wilson, founder and CEO of Wilson Medical Innovations. Today, I'm going to share a story about family, loyalty, and second chances. In about 45 minutes, I'll be having a conversation with someone very important to me. Someone I haven't spoken to in 13 years. The viewer count started climbing immediately. 50 viewers, 100, 300. Some of you might know my story from the recent Forbes article. How I survived stage 4 pancreatic cancer and built a $50 million medical device company. But there's a part of that story Forbes didn't tell. The part about family. 500 viewers. 800. Today, my estranged son is coming to visit me for the first time since I was diagnosed with cancer 13 years ago. He's been led to believe that my cancer might be returning. I'm going to test whether he's here for reconciliation or for something else entirely. The comment section started exploding. Viewers sharing their own family betrayal stories, others expressing support, some questioning the ethics of live streaming a family reunion. 1,000 viewers, 1,500. I had briefed my security chief, Captain Moore, on the protocol. He would remain off camera but within earshot. If I needed him to escort Michael out, I would simply say, Captain Moore, please assist my guest with leaving. Dr. Davis, my oncologist, was on standby by phone. If medical questions arose about my actual health status, I could call him as an expert witness. 2,000 viewers, 3,000. I want you to listen carefully to this conversation. I want you to hear what someone says when they think their dying father might have money to leave behind. And I want you to judge for yourself whether blood automatically makes someone family. 5,000 viewers. The comments were moving so fast I could barely read them. Fair warning, what you're about to witness might be uncomfortable. Truth usually is. At exactly 2 p.m., I heard the security gate buzzer. Michael had arrived. Well, everyone, it's showtime. The man who abandoned his dying father 13 years ago is about to walk through that door. Let's see what he has to say. 10,000 viewers and climbing. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and smiled at the camera. Here we go. I opened the front door to find a stranger wearing my son's face. The 21-year-old kid who had walked out of my hospital room had been replaced by a 34-year-old man in a $2,000 suit. Armani, if I had to guess. Expensive Italian leather shoes, a Rolex Submariner on his wrist retail price. Around $15,000, all very impressive, except I knew from my private investigator's report that Michael was broke. Dad. He extended his hand for a handshake, like we were business associates meeting for the first time. Michael, come in. He stepped into my foyer and stopped dead. The house was designed to impress. 30-foot ceilings, Italian marble floors, a crystal chandelier that cost more than most people's cars, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean. This is incredible, Dad. The Forbes article mentioned you had done well, but this is... He gestured around, calculating. Always calculating. Please come into my study. I thought we could talk privately. As we walked down the hallway, I could see him taking inventory. Original artwork on the walls. Persian rugs, custom millwork. He was appraising everything like a real estate agent preparing a listing. We entered my study and I gestured to the chair across from my desk. The camera was positioned perfectly to capture both of us, though Michael couldn't see the setup from his angle. 15,000 viewers, I said casually, glancing at my laptop. I'm sorry, what? Nothing. Just checking some business metrics. Please, sit down. Michael settled into the chair, and I got my first good look at him in 13 years. He was trying to project success, but I could see the tells. The suit was expensive, but it was slightly too big, probably borrowed or bought secondhand. The Rolex was impressive, but there was a small scratch on the crystal that suggested it was pre-owned. The confidence was practiced, not natural. This was a man playing a role he couldn't afford. Dad, I want to start by saying how sorry I am about what happened 13 years ago, about not being there for you during the most difficult time of your life. Interesting opening. He had clearly rehearsed this. I was young and scared, and I handled the situation poorly. I made mistakes that I've regretted every single day since. 20,000 viewers now. The comment section was brutal. Crocodile tears. Where was he for 13 years? This guy is fake. What specifically do you regret, Michael? I regret abandoning you when you needed me most. I regret not supporting you during your treatment. I regret missing out on 13 years of your life. All very touching. But notice what he didn't regret. He didn't regret calling me a worthless investment. He didn't regret calculating the cost of my life. He didn't regret choosing his MBA over his father's survival. I understand you're going through some difficult times yourself, I said. His composure slipped for just a moment. Yes, the divorce has been challenging, and the business didn't work out the way I had hoped. What happened to Strategic Solutions? He looked surprised that I knew the name of his company. You know about my business? I know quite a bit about your life, Michael. I know about the failed consulting firm. I know about Jennifer filing for divorce. I know about the house in foreclosure. I know about your Thursday nights at Murphy's Tavern. The color drained from his face. You've been watching me? Let's just say I wanted to understand what kind of man my son had become. 25,000 viewers. The comments were coming so fast they were just a blur of outrage and support. Dad, I know how this looks. I know my timing seems suspicious, coming right after the Forbes article, but I swear to you, this isn't about money. What is it about then? It's about family. It's about making things right between us. It's about having a relationship with my father again. That's very touching, Michael. Tell me, what did you think when you read that Forbes article? I was amazed. I was proud of what you had accomplished. I was impressed by your resilience and your success. And what was your very first thought when you saw the $50 million valuation? He hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. So did 28,000 viewers. I thought about how I had underestimated you, how wrong I had been about your chances of survival. Interesting. According to my private investigator, your first stop after reading the Forbes article was Goldberg, Stone & Associates. Estate planning attorneys, direct hit. His face went completely white. That's not... I can explain that. Please do. I was concerned about your health. When I heard the rumors about your cancer possibly returning, I wanted to understand the legal implications. I wanted to make sure you had proper estate planning in place. How thoughtful of you to be concerned about my estate planning. 30,000 viewers now. The comments were savage. He's lying. This is painful to watch. Dad, throw him out. Michael, I have a question for you. A very simple question. And I want you to think carefully before you answer. Okay? If the medical tests I'm scheduled for next week come back positive, if my cancer has returned and I only have months to live, what would you want our relationship to look like during that time? He leaned forward, and I could see him calculating. Always calculating. I would want to spend as much time with you as possible, Dad. I would want to take care of you. I would want to be the son I should have been 13 years ago. And if the tests come back negative, if I'm healthy and have many years left to live, another hesitation, briefer this time but visible, then I would want to build a relationship with you for the long term, maybe even explore ways I could contribute to Wilson Medical. There it was, the truth hiding behind the performance. It was time to end this charade. Michael, before we discuss your potential contribution to Wilson Medical, I have one more question. 35,000 viewers were watching now. The comment section was absolutely exploding. I could see fragments scrolling by. He's about to destroy him. This is better than any movie. Get him, Dad. Sure, Dad. Ask me anything. In all of our conversation today, in all of your apologies and explanations and future plans, there's one question you haven't asked me. One question that any son who genuinely cared about his father's well-being would ask immediately. Michael looked confused. What question? You haven't asked me how I'm feeling? The silence in that room was deafening. Michael's face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, realization, panic. You haven't asked about my symptoms. You haven't asked about my pain levels. You haven't asked when my next test is scheduled or which doctor I'm seeing. You haven't asked if I'm scared or if I need support. 40,000 viewers. The comments were brutal. Oh, snap! He got him. This son is heartless. In fact, Michael, let me tell you exactly what you've asked me about in the past hour. You asked about my house. You asked about my business valuation. You asked about contributing to Wilson Medical. You asked about our future relationship in the context of my lifespan and your potential inheritance. Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But not once, not one single time did you ask your supposedly dying father how he's actually feeling. Dad, I was trying to be positive. I didn't want to focus on the negative aspects. Stop. Just stop talking for a moment and listen to what our audience thinks about your performance. Our audience? I turned my laptop screen toward him. 42,000 live viewers, comments streaming by faster than human eyes could read them. We're live on YouTube, Michael. 42,000 people have been watching our reunion for the past hour. The blood drained completely from his face. You're live streaming this? I wanted witnesses, Michael. I wanted people to see what happens when a son abandons his dying father and then returns 13 years later when that father's worth $50 million. Dad, please, turn off the camera. This is private family business. Family business? Is that what you call this? Because let me tell you what the audience sees. They see a man in a $15,000 watch, which I know you can't afford, sitting in his father's $8 million mansion talking about contributing to a $50 million company without once asking about his father's health. 45,000 viewers. I glanced at some of the comments streaming by. This is the most narcissistic son I've ever seen. How do you not ask your dying dad how he feels? This guy only cares about money. Dad, you're embarrassing me in front of thousands of people. I'm embarrassing you? Michael, you embarrassed yourself. You failed the most basic test of human decency, and you did it in front of 45,000 witnesses. What test? You never told me this was a test. Life is a test, Michael. 13 years ago, you were tested when your father received a terminal cancer diagnosis. You failed that test. Today, you were tested again when you thought your father's cancer might be returning. You failed again. I stood up and walked around my desk, positioning myself directly in front of the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what this man did 13 years ago. When I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and given 6 months to live, my 21-year-old son calculated the cost of my medical treatment. $847,000. He determined that I wasn't worth the investment and abandoned me completely. 48,000 viewers. The comment section was a waterfall of outrage. He never visited me during 8 months of chemotherapy, never called during radiation treatments, never checked on me when I lost 40 pounds and looked like a skeleton. He wrote me off as a failed business deal and moved on with his life. Michael was staring at the floor, his face completely red. But here's the beautiful irony. While Michael was using my death money to finish his MBA, I was recovering from my cancer and designing medical devices that would revolutionize cancer treatment. I built Wilson Medical from my hospital bed, powered by the memory of being called a worthless investment. 50,000 viewers now. the milestone I had been hoping for. And today, when Michael thought my cancer might be returning, what was his primary concern? His inheritance. His lawyers advised him on estate planning before he even confirmed I was actually sick. I walked back to my chair and sat down, staring directly at Michael. So let me ask you one final question, Michael. And I want these 50,000 viewers to hear your honest answer. If you knew with absolute certainty that I was healthy and would live another 20 years, would you still want a relationship with me? The question hung in the air like a sword. Michael looked up at me, then at the camera, then back at me. His mouth moved, but no words came out. Take your time, Michael. 50,000 people are waiting for your answer. Dad, that's not fair. That's not a fair question. Why isn't it fair? Because it puts me in an impossible position. If I say yes, people will think I'm lying. If I say no, I look like a terrible person. Michael, the truth isn't supposed to be easy. The truth is supposed to be true. He sat there in silence for 30 seconds. 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Finally, he spoke. Dad, I think we should have this conversation privately, without the cameras. This isn't appropriate for public consumption. Michael, you just answered my question. What do you mean? A son who genuinely wanted a relationship with his father would say, Yes, Dad, I want you in my life, regardless of your health or your wealth. Instead, you're worried about your public image and how your answer might be interpreted. 52,000 viewers. The comments were coming too fast to read, but I could see the sentiment. Pure outrage at Michael's performance. You came here today because you saw dollar signs in a Forbes article. You researched estate planning before you researched my actual medical condition. And when given the opportunity to demonstrate genuine love for your father in front of 52,000 witnesses, you chose to protect your reputation instead. I looked directly into the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something remarkable today. You've seen what happens when someone mistakes blood for family, when someone confuses DNA with love, when someone thinks a relationship can be purchased rather than earned. I turned back to Michael. You failed the test, son. Again. The room was completely silent except for the sound of Michael's heavy breathing and the quiet hum of the camera equipment. It was time for the final verdict. I looked directly into the camera at my 52,000 viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, before I deliver my final verdict, I need to tell you something important, something that will put everything you've witnessed today into perfect context. Michael was staring at me with growing dread. He could sense what was coming. The cancer rumors you may have heard about me this week? The reports about possible metastasis? The concerns about my prognosis? I paused for dramatic effect. Complete fiction. Michael's eyes went wide. What? I am not sick, Michael. I have not been sick for 13 years. My last oncology screening was 6 weeks ago. Clean bill of health. No cancer, no symptoms, no medical concerns whatsoever. The comment section exploded. 55,000 viewers now, and they were losing their minds. I created those rumors specifically to test you. I wanted to see if you were here for reconciliation or for inheritance. I wanted to know if you would care about your father's well-being or your father's wealth. Michael's mouth fell open. You lied to me? I tested you, Michael. The same way you tested me 13 years ago when you calculated whether I was worth keeping alive. I turned back to the camera. For those of you just joining us, here's what happened. This man abandoned his dying father in 2011, calling him a worthless investment. He never visited during treatment, never called during recovery, complete radio silence for 13 years. 58,000 viewers, the biggest audience of my life. 3 days after a Forbes article revealed I had built a $50 million company, he called wanting to reconcile. His first stop after reading that article? An estate planning attorney's office. I pulled out my phone and showed Michael the private investigator photos on the screen. These are surveillance photos of you at Goldberg, Stone & Associates last Tuesday, 4 hours discussing inheritance law before you ever confirmed whether your father was actually healthy or sick. Michael was shaking now. Dad, please stop this. When I told you my cancer might be returning, you didn't ask about my symptoms, my treatment options, or my emotional state. You asked about my estate planning and how you could contribute to my company. 60,000 viewers. I had reached my goal. And today, in front of 60,000 witnesses, when asked if you would want a relationship with me, regardless of my health or wealth, you refused to answer. You were more concerned about your public image than your father's love. I stood up and walked to my desk, opening the top drawer. Michael, 13 years ago, you made a business decision. You calculated the cost of keeping me alive versus the benefit of letting me die. You chose your financial future over your father's life. I pulled out a manila envelope and held it up. Today, I'm making a business decision. I'm calculating the cost of having you in my life versus the benefit of keeping you out of it. I opened the envelope and removed a single document. This is my last will and testament, updated yesterday. Would you like to know what it says about you? Michael's face was completely white. Dad, don't do this. It says, I, Edward Wilson, being of sound mind and body, leave nothing to my biological son, Michael Wilson. He chose not to be my family when I needed him. I choose not to be his family now that he needs me. The comment section was moving so fast it was just a blur of text. 62,000 viewers witnessing the most public disinheritance in internet history. My entire estate, including Wilson Medical Innovations and all associated assets, will be distributed among my employees and medical research foundations dedicated to helping families affected by cancer. Michael stood up abruptly. This is insane, Dad. You can't be serious. Sit down, Michael. I'm not finished. No, I'm done with this humiliation. Turn off the cameras. Michael, if you leave this room now, you'll be walking out on your father for the second time in your life. 62,000 people will witness you abandoning me again. Is that really how you want this story to end? He hesitated at the door, his hand on the handle. But if you stay, if you sit back down and listen to what I have to say, maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance for redemption. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of Michael's labored breathing. After 30 seconds, he walked back to his chair and sat down. Thank you. Now, here's what's going to happen next. I looked directly at him. You're going to leave this house and never contact me again. You're going to live with the consequences of your choices. You're going to understand that family is not a business transaction, that love cannot be calculated on a spreadsheet, that loyalty is not a negotiable commodity. 65,000 viewers now, the largest audience I had ever addressed. But most importantly, Michael, you're going to serve as a lesson to these 65,000 viewers about what happens when you abandon someone during their darkest hour. I turned to address the camera directly. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something extraordinary today. You've seen what happens when someone mistakes family for finance, when someone confuses inheritance for investment, when someone believes blood automatically entitles them to love. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Justice served. This dad is a legend. Michael got what he deserved. My son called me a worthless investment 13 years ago. Today I'm returning the favor. Michael Wilson is a worthless investment in my future happiness. I walked over to Michael's chair. Captain Moore, please assist my guest with leaving. Security Chief Captain Moore appeared from the hallway, professional and courteous. Sir, I'll escort you to your vehicle. Michael looked up at me one last time. Dad, this isn't over. Yes, Michael, it is. As Captain Moore walked Michael toward the front door, I returned to my camera. 67,000 viewers, you have been incredible witnesses to justice today. You've seen proof that family is defined by actions, not genetics, by loyalty, not legality, by presence during crisis, not claims during prosperity. The front door closed. Michael was gone. For 13 years, I built an empire powered by abandonment. Today, I defended that empire surrounded by chosen family, my employees, my friends, and 67,000 strangers who showed more concern for my well-being than my own son. I looked directly into the camera lens. To everyone watching who has been abandoned by family, who has been called worthless, who has been written off as a bad investment, this one's for you. Build your empire, prove them wrong, and never, ever let anyone convince you that blood makes someone family. I smiled. Blood makes you related. Love makes you family. Choose wisely. I reached over and turned off the camera. The live stream was complete. Justice had been served to 67,000 witnesses, and for the first time in 13 years, I felt truly free.